What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access, and today we are joined by one of the icons and legends in the rap business, James Prince.
Prince. Yeah.
Thank you for coming through, sir.
Oh, man, a pleasure to be here, man.
Yes, thank you. So, obviously, you have your book, The Art and Science of Respect. It's an amazing read, and anyone that wants to know about rap, but also about personal growth and development and information on how to survive in life, really, and whatever game you happen to be playing in life, I would highly recommend it. And the book has two sections. The first is about your life and coming up before Rap a Lot, and then a lot of the second half of the book focuses on what was going on musically and then with boxing and different things. And you know, one of the things that I thought was interesting was one of the stories that you told was about your typing class.
Yeah.
And I wanted you to, you know, that was a situation that made you feel uncomfortable, but then you also grew and learned a lot from that.
Yeah.
So how were you able to be in a situation that made you uncomfortable, but then realize that this is something that could lead you to have, you know, this growth and to not dismiss the opportunity?
Right. Well, it ended up happening to me after the fact. You know, I didn't realize, you know, in the midst of being in a typing class, it was like a bigger picture behind me being there. You know, at the time, you know, I was like, you know, I didn't sign up for typing. You know what I mean? Why y'all gonna put me in a typing class? It's for girls. You know, so I tried to, you know, that's the way my mind was working.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I tried to get out of the class and they wouldn't let me get out of the class. On top of being in the class, you know, I had a teacher that was gay, you know, and at that time I like really had an issue with that as well, you know. So I'm like, not only do I not want to be in typing, y'all gonna put me in here with this kind of situation. So I sit there for like 2 weeks or so and I wouldn't cooperate, you know, I wouldn't do anything. And what ended up happening was the power of me passing was greater than that I was feeling about the class and the teacher. You know what I mean? Me being a failure, just, it was a strong thing within me that I wasn't gonna be no failure no matter what circumstance I was under. So therefore I became the second or third fastest typer in the room. You know what I mean? I learned how to put my fingers together, and I became great at that, which eventually led me to other places. You know what I mean? I ended up getting like a top, it was 3 students that had 3 jobs was offered to them. 2 of the jobs was Exxon. You know, we can go in and intern with Exxon. The other one was Colonial Savings at a savings and loan bank.
Right.
So I took that opportunity. So, you know, in retrospect, when I think about, you know, all of the things that, you know, was taking place that I thought wasn't a good thing for me, or I thought didn't fit, you know, the journey that I want to be a part of, it ended up like complementing, you know, really the rest of my life.
Okay.
You know, to be real. Yeah, things I learned in that class complemented every area that I moved forward on up until this point.
And then I think tied into that, and also throughout the book, one of the themes that may not be overt, but is definitely discussed, is like patience.
Yeah.
And 2 of the things that people that haven't read the book, but they should read the book to really learn and understand this, was dealing with Seven Aurelius.
Yeah.
And kind of waiting as his career progressed with the Murder Inc. dudes before you approach Murder Inc.
Right.
And then also similarly with the Drake situation.
Yeah.
So what was it about your life and how you had grown as a person and as a businessman up to that point that gave you that patience to where when Seven was doing this stuff with Ja Rule and you talk in a lot of detail, you were going to say something, but then you realized he was about to work with Ashanti and you were like, oh, let me just wait.
Right. Well, that was, first of all, I believe and I've learned that there's a time and a place for everything. So, you know, you don't react, you know, off of every invitation that's given to you in a manner of not thinking it out properly.
Okay.
you know, just because that invitation is given. And under the situation where Murder Inc. was, you know, I understood that if I reacted too soon, it could cost me a bunch of money. You know what I mean? I understood that, you know, everybody at that time wanted to be in control, other words, of their production to a certain extent. Other words, if I'm in the mind frame of thinking I have a producer that I own his publishing, the likelihood and the motive for me to use him on my product is going to be, you know, kind of high. You know what I mean? Vice versa, if I'm using a guy that's signed to someone else, then I'm like, whoa, a lot of this money going to go this way.
Going elsewhere.
So therefore, with me understanding that, I'm like, go ahead, brother, and you know, do as many songs as you can do with these guys. And I want it to be done and over with, so you know I can come and collect on a whole lot versus a little.
And then, you know, what do you think happened in your life to make you kind of understand that from, you know, your growing up, because you tell so many amazing stories about like your life and how you learned certain lessons by different members of your family, both biologically and then by, you know, being assumed family. So what did you see or what did you learn that really did that for you?
Well, I mean, you know, in the hood, you know, you learn a lot of things through trial and error. And, you know, I learned so many things by observing, you know, mistakes from other people. You know what I mean? I saw a whole lot, and I capitalized on the things. And, you know, I always believe in being a person that's quick to listen and slow to speak. So, you know, from observing and witnessing so many things in the hood equipped me for corporate America when I came to corporate America, because a lot of these rules was instilled in me by that point.
Okay. And then how did you, when you started making the transition into the record business and you were having your different partners and working with different people, how did you, you know, apply, what were the things that you applied from the streets and you didn't apply from the streets once you were like, oh, Rap-A-Lot was going to make money? Because you talk about in the book how when you went to Def Jam and saw like a check for LL Cool J that Leor Cohen had, you were like, oh, this is some real money.
Yeah.
So then how did you navigate that, just flip that and apply it?
Yeah, well, I always knew that I wanted to be a millionaire. And then I understood that in order to become a millionaire, you had to play on a millionaire's playing field. So, you know, I realized that the music industry was a millionaire's playing field. And definitely, you know, when Leor showed me that check, you know, it just inspired me just a little more, because I'm like, okay, it's there to be gotten. And, you know, with that being understood, you know, I was able to apply a lot of the principles that I learned in the street and a lot of the things I couldn't apply, because, you know, anybody that know the rules and different things of the street, you know, you can't come into corporate America and apply them the same way and last. So, you know, I had to like become a student of the game and the different rules that existed. You know, in corporate America, I knew the rules of the street, and, you know, sometimes there was a time and a place for both. Yeah.
And then obviously being more, making an emphasis on listening rather than talking, and getting to watch your career and your success over the years, I always thought it was interesting that, if I remember correctly, you were the first rap executive I really remember hearing talking on the records that wasn't trying to be an artist. Because, you know, obviously Schoolie D had Schoolie D records, so he was rapping and Eazy-E was rapping, but when you were coming up, you weren't. So what gave you the idea that it was important for you to speak on the Ghetto Boys records and to be so political and to do that in the late 80s, early 90s?
Well, you know, my mission from day one was, the reason I came up with the name, the Ghetto Boys. You know, I want to be a voice for ghettos all around the world, you know, and I want to speak and inspire the hoods all around the world with, you know, the wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that I knew of. So that was one of the main reasons I started speaking on those intros, because I knew it was so many people around the world that was in bondage the way I was in bondage. So some of my first conversations was to try and pull them out of bondage, and I painted a portrait, you know, letting them know the music game is the new dope game. You know what I mean?
Right.
Leave that alone. It's legal. Come over to the new game, because this is where it's headed. This is where it's at. And you know, I was able to penetrate and capture a lot of guys' attention that I didn't even know was really listening. But you know, in retrospect, when you know I listened to them today, it was those seeds that I was planting that, you know, caused Cash Money, Master P, Tony Draper, all of these guys to come to fruition and be relevant today.
You guys are based in Houston, but then expanded out to Chicago with Do or Die and working with, you know, legendary Traxter doing the beats, Do or Die being hugely successful. So, and then obviously with Resurrection, having Larry Hoover on there. So what did you realize was, and you talk about going to visit him and having him on the album and different things and his importance in Chicago and around the country. So for you, how did you go from not knowing much about him to learning about him to then understanding why he was so important to want to put him on a Ghetto Boys album?
Yeah, well, Chicago was one of the first cities to embrace rap a lot. And, you know, Larry Hoover knew me and knew of my movement before I really knew of him and his movement.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he extended an invitation, you know, for me to come in and visit him. And, you know, I did. You know, I went in and had opportunity, you know, to chop it up with him for a few hours, not knowing that, you know, they was putting this wristband around me with this tool in it that would, you know, recording. Not knowing I was under surveillance and being wiretapped. You know, I wasn't in agreement with all of that. But, you know, it's a good thing he and I was talking about legal things and legal movements, because if not, then, you know, they probably would have handcuffed me before I left out of the jail. You know, because they've been looking for that kind of opportunity as long as I can remember. But, you know, that movement, that whole Midwest movement was a powerful movement for rap a lot. It really was the foundation of us, you know, building our empire on, and I will forever, you know, feel a special way about the Midwest, because it was Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, you know, all of those areas that was riding with us real tough, even before Houston and a lot of the places down south. And, you know, that led to me, like, connecting with a lot of things in the Midwest.
So why do you think, having been there and spent a lot of time there over the years, what was it about going to George's Music Room? What was it about all those situations that made Chicago, you know, so much a part of what Rap-A-Lot did?
Yeah, they could relate to our movement unlike no other. You know what I mean? You know, even though they're in the Midwest, you know, it's a connection that's really unexplainable. And I think if I had to explain it, I think a lot of them are from the South.
A lot of Mississippi.
Yeah.
A lot of people from Mississippi moved up, especially.
Yeah. So that has to be the connection, you know, because it's a strong connection, you know, the whole Midwest and down south. And, you know, I've connected with a lot of those individuals. Definitely my man, you know, Hoover, you know, who I've been speaking of in the last few days, you know. That's a situation where they're trying to bury him, you know, Jeff Ford, a lot of those guys alive. You know, those brothers are alive, and they're trying to be buried alive, you know, have them next to you know, the Unabomber and this Nicholas, the Oklahoma bomber. You know, these guys have 1 life sentence. They gave Larry Hoover 6 life sentences for conspiracy.
Right.
So, you know, you have to put that on the scale. Don't take a rocket scientist to understand that that punishment that they given him is above and beyond the call of duty. But racism is behind it, you know, yeah.
And I think that clearly ties into a lot of what the Ghetto Boys were talking about, starting with the Grip It on That Other Level album, because I always will tell people that it was amazing to hear in 1989, you guys talking about how you couldn't get your songs played in New York on the radio.
Yeah.
But then you were talking about being black owned and won't sell out and all that. And that, as you mentioned earlier, inspired the Tony Drapers of the world and the Master P's and the Babies and, you know, everybody else, I'm sure 3 6 Mafia, et cetera. So what was it that you noticed being a black man, owning your own record label and putting out, you know, street reporting, gangster rap, people call it different things, but telling those stories, what made it so important that you were doing it?
You know, it was important to me because I understood the power behind it. You know what I mean? It was something in me that was bigger than myself. You know what I mean? Even when the invitation was extended to me and the word was, you know, from all of these alphabet boys, you know, they send messages to try to get me to disown where I was from and my people. And, you know, I told them I'd rather be dead than to disown where I'm from or my people. So it was in me to that extent where I was willing to die to stay connected. And, you know, with that being said, you know, all of my moves have been fearless where they're concerned, you know, because, you know, as a lot of people know, they tried to put a hit on me. You know, they threatened my life. They put a guy on me that killed, you know, 8 people, Schumacher. You know what I mean? His sidekick, Chad Scott, you know, just recently got indicted. 10 indictments for the very thing that I shined a light on him over a decade ago. So, you know, this is like real life situations that's still going on.
And that's what I think is one of the great things about the book Respect, is that when you're in the book and you're showing these letters from Maxine Waters and you're showing the different things of the indictments and everything, it goes from you telling a story to you documenting facts and things that really happened. So what gave you the idea to want to actually put those documents in the book as part of the text?
Because I believe more is caught than taught. You know what I mean? A person will believe and go by what they see more so than what they hear. And, you know, I had it, you know, so why not show it to them?
Right. Okay. And then throughout the book also you talk about your different interactions with a lot of the biggest executives in particular. And, you know, obviously the thing that you were going to be doing with Suge and the Murder Inc. guys didn't work out. But throughout the years, you had talked about your different interactions with Suge and some of your impressions about him and what happened to him and different types of things. So when you were first meeting Suge, interacting with him, like what did you notice about him that maybe he's playing a part to what's happening to him now?
Well, you know, he was campaigning. You know what I mean? He was campaigning with Foolishness back then. And ultimately, you know what I mean, he got elected with Foolishness. And, you know, my heart go out to the brother right now, you know what I mean? Because I wouldn't wish that on you know, my worst enemy. You know, basically, he just about got a life sentence. You know, whether he accepted, you know, voluntarily or not, you know, that's what's before him right now. But that's the reality of campaigning with Foolishness. You know what I mean? That's the end results of those kind of situations. So it's important for the future, the present. You know, it's hard to talk to the past, but to understand that and learn from the mistakes of, you know, campaigning with the wrong purpose, you know. At least know the reward that go along with those campaigns.
And something you also do throughout the book is talk a lot about like the street codes and how the streets work. And you talk about in the book how, you know, you went to the Hypnotized video shoot with Biggie and Puffy. And I thought that was very powerful because your sense of what was going on did not match what Biggie was feeling. And he was looking at it as strictly business and not paying attention to what was going on in LA. So what do you think was the difference of why you were able to pick up on things? And then obviously he was killed in Los Angeles later, but what made your perception of things different from what you noticed his perception was?
Well, you know, there's a thing that my street depth, you know, meaning that I'm a little more seasoned where the streets are concerned. And, you know, Puff, Biggie is somewhat surface deep to a certain extent. You know what I mean? You got to call it like it is, you know, because I saw that a mile away. You know what I mean? It was important for me to explain to them the possibilities and the things that I was hearing, you know, but just automatically, you know, it would register to me, you know, after what had happened with Pac and assumptions of them having something to do with it, or the hate that was in the air for them, period. Even before that took place, this wasn't a place to be. You know what I mean? And you have to really have experience where the streets are concerned to even begin to understand, you know, what can happen in them. And I think if they would have really been a little more depth where the streets were concerned, they wouldn't have been here like that.
Right.
Yeah. So it was the naiveness, you know, where streets are concerned. It can cost you your very life.
You put in the book too, like if the streets don't want you, don't go.
Yeah.
And that's something that, you know, different people see in different ways.
Yeah.
And I think that that's one of the lessons that, you know, I think people can take from the book and understand. And that's why I think it's so powerful is how you know, start off with talking about your life, and then you can, if people really read the whole book and understand what you're talking about, the lessons you learned in your life apply to the music industry, but they apply still to life in general on so many different levels. So now, and you also had the great story about the executive from Virgin canceling his meeting with the Rolling Stones to come meet with you in Houston. And that really, it didn't surprise me. I was surprised to learn the story, but it didn't surprise me because he's looking at it, I think, from everything I know about you, the way you would. It was like a business opportunity. They got the Rolling Stones. Whether he goes to see them or not is irrelevant, but he didn't have Rap-A-Lot.
Right.
So, and obviously through New Tribe and a lot of the different things, you know, as discussed in the book, Rap-A-Lot was bigger than ever with Scarface's success, Ghetto Boys' success. So learning from the Virgin machine and being part of that after, you know, the Deaf American thing didn't work out, leaving Priority, having the Warner Brothers deals fall through, what did Virgin do that you had been waiting for as a businessman your whole career that enabled it to be so successful?
They broke bread. but
That's
even,
a good one.
Yeah, even more important than that, you know, Ken Berry, you know, which was Bronson. He and Bronson started Virgin together. Right. The game that he gave me, the wisdom that he gave me of the reason for closing that deal, like enhance, you know, my ability to do the same on several deals after that. So, you know, just, you know, like one would hear that story and overlook that part of it. You know what I mean? Because I asked him, I wanted to know, man, what, and he explained to me the feeling. He said, you only get this feeling, you know, just every so often about deals. And when you get that feeling, you close immediately. And, you know, after him enlightening me and sharing that with me, I started like tapping into that feeling about certain deals. And, you know, when I got that feeling, I started executing. And every time I executed and was successful, I thought about, you know, wow, man, this man, and I'd made so much more money by executing of everything that he said to me that appeared to not be much. You know, just like I sit here and, you know, with the interview with you, you know, I've interviewed with many of people and nobody like really understood a lot of the things that I wrote like you understand it. You know what I mean? Just, you know, I'm articulating that as you are interviewing me. I'm like, wow, this brother really picked up on some things he read about it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people interview me, but the depth of the questions that you asking me, I understand what that means. You know what I mean? I understand that you're a little deeper than the average. I just wanted to say that.
Well, I appreciate that, Jay Prince. Thank you for that. But as you can tell, I'm a huge fan of obviously hip hop culture and the music, but what you've done and accomplished too, and I think that's why it's important that people read this book, because, you know, I got into all this because I love the music. And then as my status in the game changed as a writer and interviewer and everything, I've connected with people. Obviously, I'm not from the hood, I'm not black, I'm not all these things, but what I did was what can I learn from this? How can it make me better? And I noticed in your book, you obviously came up in, you know, bad circumstances, but it seemed like that always mattered to you. Like, this is what's going on in my life, but this is what I want. And you know, put in the book all your goal sheets. And that's something, you know, I haven't been as successful like you have with a lot of them, but that's something that I knew was important. And for you, like, where did you get that idea to have goal sheets, to have like, and on your goal sheets that are in the book, they're not music related exclusively. You know, it's like, I want to buy Pat a car. I want to buy my grandma a house. I want to, you know, have $1 million outside of rap a lot. Like, where did that come from, given, as you talk about extensively in the book, you didn't go to some prestigious school and you weren't in an environment where your family had 17 businesses. Like, where did that come from?
Well, that came from my heart, you know. Originally, I had the desire to want to do those things because the seeds of love was planted in me, you know, to want to return those things to the very people that you know, I was talking about. But, you know, I also, you know, took it a step further, and, you know, I read the book, Think and Grow Rich. And from reading that book, it taught me the importance of writing things down and prioritizing the very things that I desired, and, you know, figuring out a more clear path of, you know, being able to accomplish and attain those very things. So, you know, it added on to that already existed in me, and that was beautiful.
And then I think one of the other things that I've always admired about you too, and this was long before I was really writing, but just when I would see on, I think it was on Rap City, where and you were talking about how you were making $250,000 off of hay. And I was just like, what? I didn't know. And then you talk about that also a lot in respect of how when you bought your estate and your compound, that it came with a business attached to it with the hay. So, like, I think it's important to explain to people, like, yeah, you can be successful and have all these things going on, but to not close yourself off from opportunities that are sitting right there. Like, how, I know you talk about coming up and like making the bikes and the engines and all these different things. But how did you realize, or what made you realize that you needed to have more than one hustle, more than one way to like, and to look for unconventional things like, hey.
Right. Well, you know, I always kind of been a person that I never like, no matter, you know, how much money I may be able to accomplish, I never like to practice wasting it.
Right.
You know, just blowing it and, you know, just foolishly.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I have to constantly like remind myself, don't become that person, don't practice that habit. Because, you know, as we all know, when you practice different habits, they can make or break you. So first of all, you know, with that being understood, I looked for a situation where, you know, my ranch was concerned. I went and looked at several ranches, and, you know, I believe in counting the cost on anything before I just embrace it and jump into it. And, you know, one thing about the ranch that I purchased with the hay business and the black angles business, as well of just, you know, loving the beauty of the land and everything like that, it was real attracting to me to see a business that helped pay for the overhead where the ranch was concerned.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I kind of viewed it as, okay, this is more of a situation where everything can be on autopilot, where the ranch can pay for itself.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? If not totally close to it. You know, it wasn't even a situation where I had to make money off the ranch. Of course, that would have been icing on the cake.
Right.
But, you know, anybody that, you know, that's in the ranch business understand that, you know, that's a business unless you have oil or some, you know, crazy devices like that on it, you know, it's not a money-making situation.
Right. And they're very expensive for the overhead.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were talking about decisions and choices. One of the things, you talk about two things that I think are related, so I was trying to figure out the good way to combine them, but you talk extensively about not drinking, doing drugs, or having anything that would take away the power of your own mind.
Yeah.
And on a somewhat related note, you also talked about how you didn't want your children, or didn't allow them to listen to rap. You didn't want rap to raise them.
Right.
So given the, you know, the music that is out there now, and, you know, when we were coming up and stuff, how did you navigate not falling into that lifestyle? And I know, you know, directly and indirectly, a lot of the artists on the label clearly had problems with the substance abuse, and you talk about that in the book with Bushwick in particular.
Mm-hmm.
But how did you navigate that as a businessman, as a person, and still be able to, you know, produce the music and raise your children and kind of keep that those worlds separate?
Okay, well, let me deal with the first piece, the drug piece. You know, all of my life, you know, I was raised around drugs. Mm-hmm. You know, just about all of my life, people tried to, you know, give me drugs to use. You know, and I had a lot of fights because I wouldn't. You know, I was called all kinds of punks and different things because I wouldn't follow the leaders on using drugs, you know, whatever they was doing. In my mind, even, you know, as an 8-year-old, I'm like, I don't want it. So I never allowed a man to impose his will on me through whatever pressure he was trying to use to make me use that. And when I got older, I understood it even more why I didn't want the drugs in my system to like blur my focus. You know what I mean? I had big things that I wanted to accomplish. And, you know, as I learned about the drugs and the different things that was going on, I'm like, whoa, you know, I don't never want that, you know, to be a situation to stop me from reaching the goals that I want to reach.
Right.
And, you know, that's what would happen where, you know, drugs and bad habits are concerned, because they got a mind of their own when they get in your body. It's a whole different spirit, you know what I mean, of his own. And if you allow that to be the captain of your ship, then, you know, it'll be just that, you know what I mean? And it'll lead you down a road that you may not want to go. So with me, like, really understanding that, me really seeing my uncles and all the different relatives and talking to them, you know what I mean, for just trying this particular drug out one time, and how it took over their life for the next 30 or 40 years. You know, they became a slave to that drug for the next 30 years or better. So understanding that and observing that, I'm like, you won't get me like that. You know what I mean? I got big things I need to do, and I'm not gonna allow this to stop me from getting to it. Now, the other part of the question where my kids were concerned and why I didn't allow hip hop or TV or no outside force to enter my household and become the daddy in my household.
Right.
Because, you know, I understood as well from being raised, you know, without a father in my house. I understood the things I got away with. I understood the things that I had access to, such as, you know, different music and rated R situations. I understood what it done to my mind, how it matured me amongst, you know, my normal age. You know what I mean? When you have access to any and everything, when you allow your kids to have access to any and everything, then it's gonna escalate, you know, them not being a child. You know what I mean? It's gonna take away from their childhood, because once you are awakened by these certain things, then, you know, you may not want to play with a doll no more. You know what I mean? You may not want to push a doom buggy. Yeah, it's gone. So, you know, I had to not allow that to, you know, be the boss of my house.
Throughout respect that you do, I think, a great job of, like, having all these boundaries personally, professionally, and, you know, with your relationships and different things. And you explain how that shaped your business mind. So when you were getting more into the boxing world, how did you see like boxing is very similar to the rap game or different? Because on the one hand, in the book, you talk about like the Don Kings of the world and how he came at you a couple times. And then how you had also felt in a different way, but a similar way, how some of the rap executives had come at you. So like, how did you, you know, figure that out?
Yeah, well, you know, I tell everybody boxing was my first love, but, you know, I didn't know until I got into boxing that, you know, it was just as a cutthroat business as a music game was. And after really analyzing everything, I understood that really I'm dealing with a lot of the same people. You know what I mean? It's the same playing field with different rules attached to it. So I was right at home. You know what I mean? I was right at home in the boxing world because I was dealing with a lot of the homies that's from where I'm from, as well as rappers. And then I went on to find out that a lot of the people that was in high, you know, positions where boxing was concerned was a lot of some of the same principles and whatnot that I had learned about as well. So, you know, I hit the ground running. You know, I dealt with, you know, the Bob Arums, the Don Kings. You know, these guys was highly seasoned, and they've been that way for years, and they had, you know, certain things that they way of doing business for years. But I came on the playing field untamed, you know what I mean, relentless, and, you know, I couldn't be bought, you know, so I made a name for myself being that way.
And I think it's interesting throughout respect, make sure everybody pick it up if you haven't already. One thing that I thought was interesting is, you know, talking about boxing, the music industry, and then the street stuff with the Larry Hoovers and the Harry O's of the world. So what have you noticed as you look around and you look back and as writing the book or just in your normal reflection, because I know you say you pray and you know, try to evaluate things. Obviously, all those dudes I just named, very different backgrounds. Some are white, some are black, some came up rich, some came up poor. Like, what is the thread that you've noticed about that caliber of businessman? Like, what is it?
Well, you know, all of those guys, you know, that you just named are brilliant in their own way. You know what I mean? It's when I think about Hoover, you know what I mean. A lot of the other guys that mastered the street avenue of the different games that we chose to play. You know, to me, that simply means that we're brilliant people. You know, those guys were brilliant people. Then I imagine they're still brilliant. It's just that the difference is, if you try to make a career, you know, out of, you know, the things that America say is against the law or wrong, then you're going against the universal laws to a certain extent. And you can't win. So no one, at least I'm gonna advise, no one should try and make a career out of the things that are against the law. You know, take that brilliance. If any of those guys would have taken that brilliance and applied it in corporate America, you would see some of the greatest results you could ever observe, because they them kind of people.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, obviously, speaking with Harry O and Larry Hoover in particular, we saw them amass influence, wealth, different things, and just did it, as you said, in a way that people say is illegal in the United States. But that, I think the important thing is not to diminish the intelligence and the savvy and the ways to organize and to get things done on a big scale. And like you said, if they'd have been running McDonald's instead, you know, they'd be, you know, revered as, you know, brilliant dudes.
Right. No, I agree. I agree.
And then tied into all of that, what makes now the right time that you wanted to write this book?
Because of the demand, you know, the demand, the accomplishments, you know, my whole belief system of, you know, I believe readers are leaders. And, you know, I want to lead by example, because I believe more is caught than taught. So, therefore, you know, I put it all in the book. And I hope that people could digest it as well as you have.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And another thing in the book, too, that I thought was great was how you explain, like, the three things that, you know, you look for, what you look for people that you want to get into business with.
Yeah.
So I'd like for you to explain those three characteristics and how those came to be.
Yeah, well, that's a long story.
Okay.
They're going to have to read on that one, but yeah, you're speaking of the chapter, heart, loyalty, and commitment. And those are the ingredients that I built my team around. You know, those are the ingredients that I feel anybody that's trying to build something should surround themselves with people with heart, loyalty, and commitment.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you, Jay Prince, for coming through. The Art and Science of Respect is in stores now worldwide. Make sure you pick it up if you haven't already. It's an amazing read. And thank you for coming through to Unique Access.
Hey, man, I appreciate you having me.
Appreciate it, man.
All right,
Thank you,
bro.
thank you.